My parents took my sister on a vacation instead of me. She ruined the family trip and got arrested. Now they finally saw her true nature. I'm 23, a girl, and I have a younger sister, Liza, who is 18. I'm convinced she is the literal embodiment of evil. For many years, I tried to convince my parents to see the truth, but they didn't listen at least until recently. For context, I've always had a tense relationship with my parents. The reason is simple. They adore her because my mum had a miscarriage and losing a child affected her deeply. Liza, born a few years later, became a miraculous symbol of hope and joy that helped them cope with the loss. My parents literally showered her with attention and love, making her the center of our family universe. I want to clarify that I loved my younger sister when we were children. However, over time, I began to realize that Liza has an incredible talent for manipulation, and no one in the family noticed. She could turn any situation to her advantage and masterfully play the victim. Once, on my birthday, my grandparents gave me a stunning antique pocket watch. I was thrilled as my grandmother explained it was a family heirloom. Naturally, Liza turned green with envy and constantly asked me to share it. I refused as it was my birthday gift. She tried to convince my parents, but they could do nothing, since the gift came from my grandparents. That night, knowing that I'm terrified of spiders, she put a spider under my pillow so I would find it when I went to bed. I woke up to the horrible sensation of a spider crawling on me and started screaming. My concerned parents ran to my room. Liza pretended to be surprised and caring, but later, when we were alone, she admitted with a nasty smirk that she put the spider there to teach me a lesson. I was shocked at how easily she admitted it with no hint of remorse. Another incident happened when I had a crush on my classmate Mark. I finally dared to invite him over to watch a movie. I was very nervous and carefully picked out a dress to make a good impression, but as soon as Mark arrived, Liza deliberately spilled a glass of juice on my dress and started laughing at me. I was horrified and had to change, trying to hide my embarrassment. As if that wasn't enough, Liza started telling Mark humiliating stories from my childhood, making me feel extremely embarrassed. She wouldn't let us spend time alone during the movie. When Mark left, Liza smirked and told him he could find someone better. Mark, who felt uncomfortable all evening, left quickly. I simply couldn't believe how cruel and cunning my younger sister could be. For many years, I repeatedly told my parents about her misbehavior, but they always brushed it off as youthful naivety. They simply couldn't see her true nature. When I complained, they just dismissed me. Liza became their favorite, and I felt more and more like an outsider in my own family. I focused on my studies and got into a good university, which allowed me to move out and start a better life. However, every time I returned home for breaks, Liza made it clear that she hated my presence. She intentionally ignored me, refused to engage in even the simplest conversations during family meals, avoided sitting near me, or interrupted me when I spoke to my parents. Her constant attempts to belittle me proved that she hated my presence and did everything she could to make my visits unpleasant. Liza even ruined my things under the pretense of borrowing them, ultimately breaking or losing them. When I complained, my parents paid little attention and only asked us to get along. Eventually, I started avoiding trips home during breaks, making excuses to spend the time with my college friends. Honestly, my parents barely objected and chalked it up to me becoming independent and wanting to spend time away from home. When Liza finished high school, she didn't have enough grades to enter a university, so she went to a local college. She didn't have to move away from our parents. Currently, I work for a large international corporation in San Francisco and genuinely enjoy my job. I sometimes keep in touch with my parents but rarely visit home. I don't speak to Liza at all now. To the main point, recently, my father had a near-fatal heart attack. Luckily, by some miracle, he survived and was rushed to the hospital. When my mum called to tell me, I immediately booked a flight to be with him. The doctors prescribed him multiple medications and strongly recommended he start exercising. After his discharge, my father expressed a desire to spend more time with the family and said how lucky he was to have survived. I understood where his thoughts came from, so I decided to stay with them for a few days. My job allows me to work remotely, so that wasn't a problem. However, I noticed that Liza was clearly irritated by my return. I tried to avoid her because we were both older now, and I didn't want to argue after my father's heart attack. One morning at breakfast, my father suggested that we all go on a vacation together since it had been a long time since we traveled as a family. At first, I had doubts, but understanding how important it was for him, I agreed. As for Liza, she wasn't thrilled, but she had no choice. My father organized everything: plane tickets, accommodations, and planned the vacation in advance. He even informed colleagues not to disturb me, as I genuinely wanted to spend time with the family. However, when we arrived at the airport, it turned out that my ticket had been cancelled. My father and I exchanged puzzled looks. He insisted that he had booked and paid for my ticket. After checking everything, we discovered that out of the four tickets, only mine had been cancelled. While I was trying to process this, I looked at Liza. She was standing there with a sly smile, looking at me, the same expression I had seen many times before, the one she wore when she successfully pulled off another manipulation. I realized at that moment that she had cancelled my ticket, most likely using my father's computer. I started yelling at her while she continued to stand there, smiling. I pointed out to my parents that Liza had orchestrated this because she never wanted me to go on the vacation with them. Instead of believing me, my mum immediately dismissed my accusations, saying, "Your sister would never do that." She added that I needed to stop being jealous of my younger sister and that my ticket being cancelled was just an unfortunate accident. My father also tried to justify it, suggesting it might have been an airline error and that I shouldn't blame Liza. I was completely desperate that my parents couldn't even imagine that their beloved miracle daughter could be involved in such deceit. At this point, there was nothing I could do. My ticket had been cancelled, and there were no other flights that day. I could have flown the next day, but I didn't want to return home, book a new ticket, and fly alone. This was supposed to be a family trip. I also had no desire to share a room with Liza during the vacation. I had hoped she would have matured over the years, but if she had really cancelled my ticket, I couldn't help but wonder what other schemes she might have devised to ruin my trip. At first, my father wavered, suggesting we return home and plan a new trip later. But then he began talking about how long it had been since he had been on a vacation. My mum agreed with him, saying that I already travel a lot for work and wouldn't really lose anything if I didn't go. These comments hurt me deeply. It seemed they were expecting me to tell them to continue the vacation without me. So I said that they could go on vacation without me if they wanted, and they agreed easily. Even though I didn't want the money spent on tickets and the hotel to go to waste, I felt sad that they didn't care whether I went or not. It became clear that they were completely fine with going on a family vacation as three. Thus, I was left alone at the airport while my parents and Liza went on their long-awaited trip. I decided to return home to San Francisco, not wanting to spend another day at my parents' house. I tried to forget what had happened and focused on enjoying the rest of the vacation time I had taken from work. I reconnected with old friends and spent my days immersed in books. During the vacation, my parents occasionally called me via video, and I could see them enjoying their time without me. My absence didn't seem to affect their trip at all. While I wasn't overly upset about missing the vacation, I still felt a sense of being discarded. It was another reminder that in our family, Liza had always come first. I hoped that someday they would see Liza's true nature, and it seemed my wish finally came true. A few days after their trip, I woke up to several missed calls from my mum. Fearing that my father's health might have suddenly worsened, I immediately called back. Fortunately, she answered, but she sounded extremely anxious. I asked if everything was okay, and she told me something very alarming had happened. It turned out that my parents had noticed that my father's necessary heart medications were disappearing day by day. This was extremely dangerous because my father could not afford to miss any doses due to his fragile health. They were in another country and didn't know if they could find the same medications outside the US. They became seriously concerned about the missing pills and searched the entire room but found nothing. My mum went to Liza's hotel room, which was next to theirs, to borrow sunscreen while Liza was out. To her shock and horror, she found all the missing medications carefully hidden in Liza's bedside drawer. It was a terrifying discovery, and she immediately called my father. My father rushed to Liza's room and found all the medications that had been disappearing in recent days. I believe this was the moment my parents realized that their beloved, my daughter, the so-called miracle, was deliberately putting my father's health at risk. My mother's voice was trembling when she asked me if they should talk to Liza about it now. I told her not to speak with Liza until they got home. They needed to calm down and gather their thoughts in order to confront Liza effectively. Talking to Liza right away was useless as she was a master manipulator and would surely find an excuse to avoid responsibility. So, something likely happened that night, and my parents eventually decided to talk to her. Late that night, my father called me. His voice was trembling as he told me that Liza was in jail. I was stunned. He explained that Liza had a meltdown when they asked her about the missing medications. She started throwing things and shouting all kinds of insults. Her anger was mostly directed at my father. She blamed him for buying my ticket and claimed he shouldn't have allowed me to go on the trip with them. She even said that if they continued interacting with me, she would teach them a lesson. They wouldn't forget. Liza continued raging, and the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Eventually, someone at the hotel called the police. When the officers arrived, she refused to calm down and began insulting them, which led to her arrest. Liza was supposed to be released after 24 hours, and my parents couldn't do anything at that moment. In desperation, they tried to change their return flight to get back home after her release, but their plans failed when they discovered that their passports and wallets were missing. It turned out that Liza had either thrown away or hidden their passports, leaving them stranded in a foreign country without documents or money. I believe that at that moment, my parents began seeing Liza for who she really was. My mother, who had defended Liza for years, now begged me for help as they had no money or passports to fly back. She was shocked to realize the true nature of her angelic daughter. I told them not to worry, I would send money via Western Union, but they needed to find the passports to return home. I was confident that Liza hadn't thrown them away. Finally, my parents realized that I had been telling the truth about Liza all along and were grateful for my help. Despite leaving me at home and not taking me on the trip, they apologized for their behavior. Although part of me wanted to forgive my parents, I still struggled with the feeling that they had deprived me of their love all these years because of their attachment to Liza. Ultimately, I still felt hurt because they went on vacation without me, and now that they had faced the real Liza, they came to me asking for forgiveness. So, how would you answer this? Why do you think Liza stole the medications, money, and passports? Please write your thoughts in the comments. We will continue the update every day. My parents call me with fresh news, and I grow more worried about their situation. After Liza was released the next day, my parents said they would go back to the police if she didn't return the passports. Having no other choice, Liza eventually admitted where she had hidden them. When they returned home, my parents openly told Liza that she had to pack her things and move out. They finally accepted the bitter truth about their daughter's manipulations and harmful actions. They were especially concerned that she might once again put my father's health at risk by stealing his medication. This led to another loud argument between Liza and my parents. During the conflict, Liza began blaming them, expressing her anger and resentment. She claimed she didn't want to share them with anyone else and that she had been pushed to the limit when they invited me on the trip. Liza continued insisting that my parents should cut me out of their lives, claiming that having her alone was more than enough. At that moment, my parents likely realized the depth of her jealousy and how much she hated me. Despite their attempts to calm her, she continued shouting. In a fit of desperation and anger, she said she would tell everyone that they had neglected her as a child and treated her badly, essentially accusing them of parental neglect. Liza also threatened to go to the police and give false statements against my parents if they insisted on evicting her. This genuinely scared my parents, as such false accusations could seriously complicate their situation, especially since they were respected doctors in the area. The mere thought that their reputation could be destroyed by false claims left them feeling helpless and anxious. In the past few days, Liza has continued to make life difficult for my parents. When she learned that they had been contacting me more often, she flew into a rage, smashing dishes in anger. Even worse, she constantly hides their car keys, making it difficult for them to get to work. This evening, my mum called me in tears. After yet another argument, Liza had a huge tantrum and yelled at them because she wanted my mum to make her dinner. When my mum refused because she was tired from work, Liza began smashing furniture in the house. Then she went to her room and turned the music up full blast, not letting my parents get a peaceful sleep. The situation continued to worsen, and it greatly affected my parents' emotional and mental well-being. I grew increasingly worried about what might happen next. Although I had wanted my parents to see Liza's true nature, now I feared that she could pose a real threat to them. I couldn't even return home, as it might further provoke her behavior and led to new conflicts. I was doing everything I could to convince my parents to consult a lawyer so we could find a solution to this problem. The legal route seemed the best option to protect them and restore peace in our family. Update 2. As many had predicted, Liza was arrested again due to her increasingly dangerous antics. It was inevitable. One night, during a major argument, she lunged at my parents with a knife. This terrified them, and they were forced to call the police. The officers quickly detained Liza and arrested her for assault. At that point, my parents decided it was time to take a more radical step. They consulted a lawyer who explained the legal process for evicting Liza from their home. They filed an official eviction notice stating that she had to move out. They understood this wasn't an easy step, but it was necessary for their safety. My parents did not want to press charges against her. They simply wanted her to leave. They posted bail for her release from jail and handed her the official eviction notice. The document outlined all legal reasons and the deadlines by which Liza had to leave the house. My parents made sure everything was done strictly according to the law, so Liza could not contest the decision. Then, with the help of the lawyer, they went to court to begin the eviction process, which meant filing a lawsuit against Liza. 4. My parents. This was incredibly difficult. They had to take legal action against their own daughter. They felt deep sadness and guilt but understood there was no other way. The court issued an official order stating that Liza had to leave the house. If she didn't leave voluntarily, my parents would have full legal right to evict her with police assistance. Liza is expected to move out next week. My parents can finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing they have taken a step toward restoring peace in their home. It was a difficult path, but they hope life will improve once Liza leaves. Throughout all of this, I stayed in close contact with my parents and plan to invite them to San Francisco for a few weeks. This will give them a chance to take a break and recover from everything they've endured. I'm confident that a change of environment and time away from the stress Liza caused will be beneficial. Plus, it will be an opportunity to spend time together and support them as much as I can. Update 3. Many people suggested that Liza should undergo a psychological evaluation. The problem is, since she is an adult, we cannot force her to attend against her will. Due to her sudden outbursts of aggression, we don't want to provoke her and make the situation worse. My parents flew to San Francisco to spend a few days away from everything they've gone through over the past months. Last night, as we sat at my cozy apartment for dinner, they spoke to me openly. Their voices were full of humility and regret. They admitted that they had been blind to Liza's true nature all these years and asked me for forgiveness. My father expressed remorse for not heeding my warnings. Earlier, he admitted that they never expected Liza to become like this and could not see the truth behind her charming mask. Mum supported his words, acknowledging the seriousness of their mistake in ignoring my concerns about Liza's behavior over the years. Her voice trembled as she spoke about the pain of realizing that they had let me down by favoring Liza. I told them that I appreciated their attempt to take the first step toward forgiveness. I shared with them some painful memories of what I had endured because of Liza's actions. My parents listened, shocked and upset, realizing how deeply I had suffered alone. They acknowledged the pain I had gone through and expressed regret that I had felt isolated in my own family. They explained that their attachment to Liza had clouded their judgment because they had not expected Mum to become pregnant again and had always considered Liza their miracle child. With sincerity in their voices, they asked for forgiveness for all those years. It was a bitter and yet sweet moment for me because I had always wanted their acknowledgement. Although this was not the perfect way to repair our relationship, it was at least a turning point, bringing the honesty and clarity into our communication. That had been so necessary. For the first time in many years, we truly acknowledged the problems that had been undermining our lives. I told them that it would take time for me to trust them again, and we all agreed to work on it together. Meanwhile, I plan to make the most of the time spent with my family while they are here with me over the next few days. Update 4. Over time, my parents and I spent more and more time together, walking through the bustling streets, enjoying leisurely meals, and simply taking pleasure in each other's company. It was a difficult journey to rebuild our relationship, which had been fractured by years of bias and denial. I realized that their decision to seek comfort in my company was not only about physically distancing themselves from Liza, but also about wanting to restore the family they nearly lost. They needed a fresh start just as I did. My parents and I have already discussed what to do about Liza. She is currently staying with one of her friends. We cannot simply abandon her despite everything she has done to the family. As parents, mum and dad feel a deep sense of responsibility for their daughter, even if her actions were inexcusable. We acknowledge that her behavior may not just be a whim, but could indicate more serious underlying issues. We plan to explore the possibility of a mental health evaluation to better understand what is happening with her. However, since Liza is an adult, we cannot force her to undergo an assessment, so we plan to find a way to convince her to seek help voluntarily. My parents intend to contact Liza when she returns home to see if she is ready to talk. I do not want to engage with her directly, as she still harbors resentment toward me, and I am trying not to worsen the situation for the sake of her mental health. Considering her past incidents of aggression and violence, I advised my parents to meet with her in a public place so that she would be compelled to control her emotions. Our main goal is for Liza to understand our perspective and, more importantly, to recognize the deep love and care we have for her. This is not about blaming anyone. It is about coming together as a family and addressing the issues that have damaged our relationship.